Not everyone has been there, but many of us have. Story 1. Called the police on myself. In my defense, I was 14 and loaded up with scotch from my friend's parents' liquor cabinet. Story 2. Probably having unprotected sex with women I've just met without using contraception or withdrawal. Yes, that's definitely it. Story 3. Questioned traditional gender stereotypes by flashing my chest at some ladies. They laughed uncontrollably, which was the intended effect. 5 out of 10 need to not drink so much. Story 4. I tripped and landed on my face, causing a large scrape from my cheek to the top of my forehead. 8 weeks before my wedding. Story 5. I drove home late at night. I don't know how I made it, but I wasn't getting paid much and didn't want to pay for a hotel after the wedding I attended. Luckily, it was around 2 a.m., and there was no one else on the road. It was almost 30 years ago, and thinking about how stupid that decision was still makes me feel sick. If I could, I would confront that person. Story 6. I kept passing out at a bar once, like snoring, looking like a dime piece in a full suit, completely wasted and passing out at a bar. Weddings. I've done a lot of dumb things, started way too young. I steer completely away from liquor now. No exceptions in social settings. The only time I drink is when offered outside of a let's do shots setting, or any situation that could potentially turn into such a setting. It has to be among calm company, not just because of weddings, mostly because of funerals. But there are plenty of other examples that support my decision. Give me beer all day, every day. That is the best version of myself, even if he can't exist 24/7. Thank God it's Friday. Story 7. Smashed my face off a deck railing, the arm of a chair, and then the deck floor. My face looked like fried chicken, and the hangover was horrific. I stole an entire public address system from a place and felt horrible. I was wasted, and a buddy of mine jokingly packed it all in his car. Years later, a close friend ended up connected with the place I took it from, and I gave it to him to return. The place accused someone who worked there of taking it. I was very happy that person was vindicated. I hate stealing. I was an idiot 19-year-old. Story 8. I tried to race my friends in the street in my socks. Most of my friends were college athletes. I was just an average, overweight guy with an okay sprint. I did about 4 or 5 50-yard sprints after a night of heavy drinking. I went all out and ended up in the basement vomiting. That was the first night of my bachelor party. The next day, we went frisbee golfing, paintballing, and then bar crawling. My body felt terrible. Story 9. My friend threw a beer bottle at the plate glass front window of a bank, and the entire window shattered. We drove away and never heard anything about it. I imagine there was a significant response. Story 10. I went on a spring break trip when I was 25 with 4 of my friends. On the second night in Cancun, we got very intoxicated. One of my friends and I were arrested for urinating in public. I spent 2 days in a Mexican jail and was released just in time to miss my flight. Story 11. My National Guard unit was activated for hurricane relief. We were all sleeping on cots in a large open bay. One night, a group of us went out and drank heavily. I woke up in the middle of the night and urinated on the floor in front of everyone, including my lieutenant colonel and all the women. Let's just say the next day was interesting. I was a staff sergeant at the time. Story 12. Tried to pat a police horse. To be fair, it was schoolies, and whoever thought it was a good idea to deploy mounted police into crowds of thousands of drunk teenagers was an idiot. Story 13. I was at a work conference and got cut off at a German Ratskeller. That should have been the first sign. Then I went to another bar. I remember walking back to the hotel feeling like I was leaning at a 45-degree angle. I woke up at 9 a.m., panicking because I was supposed to give a talk in 30 minutes. Without showering or changing clothes, I made it to the conference site but was too hungover to do anything except pass out in the poster area. Fortunately, some British friends found me and helped me out. They were used to this sort of thing, but I felt awful to miss my presentation. Story 14. Several years after college, I got drunk back in my hometown and got on Instagram. I saw one of the very popular people in the party scene who I was friendly with at college had cancer. She was a foreign exchange student and had returned to Asia. The way her Instagram was set up, with a bunch of hospital pictures and the progression of the posts followed by a sudden stop, led me to believe she had passed away and that a family member had left her account up in her honor. In my drunken haze, I messaged her and essentially said, "Oh my God, are you dead?" Followed by a bunch of nostalgic stuff. I was so drunk that when I woke up, I thought I had dreamt it. As it was such a bizarre thing, it basically felt like a dream. Since I am rarely on Instagram, maybe 1 or 2 times a month, I moved on. Fast forward 2 to 3 weeks, I got on again to check because I wanted to see what her life had been like. And she had posted, not a family member, her. It was a cancer treatment update with a new selfie at the end. I was reading the comments, and someone said something supportive. She responded with, "Thank you. Someone messaged me a few weeks ago and asked if I was dead, and I just blocked them." My stomach sank. I checked my direct message history and, sure enough, that hazy memory I thought was a dream was in fact real. I felt so bad. To make it worse, she ended up dying 2 to 3 years later, which made me extra sad because I had burned a bridge on a casual friendship and added stress to someone's life who was really going through it. It was one thing that led me to quit drinking for a long time and changed my relationship with alcohol forever. Story 15. After drinking all day and eating about 4 pounds of chicken wings, I went to the bathroom with a tenuous hold on the contents of my stomach. All the stalls and urinals were occupied, and there was no garbage, so I threw up in the sink and completely filled it with chicken vomit. I got myself banned from the bar with the best wings near the university. I love wings. This is not the most foolish thing I ever did while drunk, but unlike other mistakes that made good stories, this one has nothing to redeem itself. Story 16. Dumb thing that I could have prevented. I hit on a girl who had a very large and muscular boyfriend. Thankfully, he was a friend of a friend and only hit me once. Dumb thing that happened faster than I could prevent it. I threw up at the bar with 6 or 8 of my friends and splattered everything and everyone at the table. Story 17. Well, it was not very safe to do so. I guess it counts. I got in the bath. Everyone else was outside. Nothing bad happened, but I am lucky I did not pass out or fall and hit my head. I was holding myself while I was getting in the tub so I would not fall over. That is the only time I have ever been drunk in my life. Story 18. Decided I was brave enough to have a fight with 3 Latvians in the pub. I don't remember any of it, but I have seen the closed-circuit television footage and it definitely happened. Story 19. Locked myself out of the apartment. Went around to the back of the building and tried to climb onto the roof to get into my window. Managed to get about 3/4 of my body onto the roof before rolling back off. I am still convinced the reason I did not get seriously injured is because I was very intoxicated. I took a breather and gathered myself. I got onto the roof on the second attempt. Story 20. Took a serious fall down the stairs to the subway at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. I heard the train was coming and did not want to miss it. I missed it. Story 21. I fell out of my friend's truck and landed in the parking lot on my hands and knees. While in that position, I picked up one hand and noticed it was torn up and bleeding. I wondered if my other hand was injured as well. So while still holding my first hand up, I picked up my other hand to look at it and promptly face planted into the parking lot. Story 22. I pulled a loser in a gay bar. I am a straight man who did not actually fancy her. Then I put in a particularly poor showing in bed. I can only imagine how bad my oral skills must have seemed compared to what she usually received from her female friends. Anyway, I was not proud of myself, and I heard through the grapevine that she definitely decided she was a woman's woman after that. The shame. Story 23. This happened in a small town at about 1 a.m. When I was a teenager, my friends and I had been drinking but got hungry, so we went to Taco Bell. When we arrived, they were closing the doors, and at the same time I really needed to use the bathroom, but they wouldn't let me in. I was so drunk that I decided to do something crazy. I ran into the middle of the intersection, pulled my pants down, and defecated right in front of all my friends, including several girls with us. Luckily, there was no traffic at the time. I gained a reputation for being crazy because of that. Story 24. Drove while impaired. Went to a friend's house to watch the match. Figured since I would be there for a few hours, it wouldn't be a problem to have a few puffs early on. I thought I would be fine by the time it was time to go home. Nope, still feeling the effects. It was the most cautious driving I have ever done. 2 to 5 miles per hour under the speed limit, braking well in advance of traffic lights, and so on. Definitely the most paranoid drive I have ever had, and arguably one of the most cautious in terms of how I was driving. I am never going to repeat it. Story 25. I used to be a bit of a kleptomaniac when I would get too drunk out and about. I would just slip something down my pants or grab something and quickly walk out of wherever I was. I am pretty sure I would not do this anymore because I rarely go out and have significantly cut back on drinking alcohol to almost nothing. Story 26. Drove, slipped, and fell causing a black eye, then lied about it to save face, and was belligerent to people I love for no reason. I have been sober for over 2 years. I do not need to do any of that anymore. Story 27. Went out with my best friend of 30 years. Got completely drunk and blacked out. I still don't remember what happened after the British pub. I even sent an apology text that I don't remember writing. He ended our friendship rightfully so. I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been sober for 6 months, but I have no friend. Story 28. I got so drunk that I vomited a lot, which scared my wife, and I ended up lying on the floor of my dirty bathroom until 3 a.m. That was my lowest point, and the next day I promised to become sober. I am happy to report that I have not had any alcohol since then. Story 29. As a fraternity pledge, a group of us were on a camping trip and ran out of food and beer. I went with another person to take items from a neighboring camp. We took a 6-pack of beer, some wine coolers, a couple of steaks, and a ham. We were heroes that night. The next day, the park ranger came and said if no one admitted to it, our group of approximately 100 would have to leave. I went to court without a lawyer. My co-defendant skipped the court date. I received 500 hours of community service and spent all of 1989 completing it. That was difficult. Story 30. There is no word limit on Reddit, and I still don't have the space here to tell it all. A better question is, how many times were you drunk and did not do something stupid? Story 31. Tried to do the worm while drunk on tequila. Ended up smashing my chin on the dance floor. There was blood, although I did not realize it until we all went from the bar to a house party that night. Story 32. I was in the Navy and we were in port. I came back drunk and went to bed. My bunk was the bottom one. I woke up needing to vomit and knew I wouldn't make it to the restroom in time. The person in the bunk above me, or the one above him, had his boots on the deck next to my bunk. I grabbed one and vomited in it. Then I took it to the restroom and emptied it. I don't remember if I rinsed it out. Nobody said anything the next day. Story 33. When I was in high school, we got very high and drunk at a friend's house. Then we wanted to take the party to another friend's house. I drove while extremely impaired and drunk. A friend of mine, who was also impaired and drunk, followed me in his car. He said I was going 35 miles per hour on the highway, weaving across both lanes, and even drove into the grass median a couple of times. The next day, it hit me that I could have died or killed someone. That was the last time I ever did anything that foolish. Story 34. I was at my lowest after the divorce. I got pulled over after having a few drinks. I was basically just accepting that I was going to go to jail that night. Then the breathalyzer came out. I do not know what happened, but I blew 0.00. I nearly looked at the police officer and said, "Really? Never again." Story 35. I broke my landlord's arm because we were both heavily intoxicated, and our wives thought it would be funny for us to wrestle. We were both pretty beat up, and he did not realize his arm was broken until the next day. Story 36. I was driving home after a few beers. I pulled over on the side of the road to urinate. While urinating, I looked through the wheel well of my van and saw a small flame on my motor. I then knelt down in a puddle of my own urine to try to blow out the flame. Story 37. I am a tame drunk, so the worst thing I did was tip over my intoxicated friend while he was sleeping in a hammock. To be fair, I would do it when I am sober if I have the chance. Story 38. I lightly tapped a girl I barely know in front of all my friends, and she enjoyed it. Later, she became my girlfriend too. Story 39. She did indeed hear from me that night. From that point forward, my friends knew they ought to take my phone away when the alcohol hits. Story 40. Fuel commercial jets on acid. A couple of friends of mine used to work at the airport fueling commercial jets. We all took a large amount of acid one night, and when it was time for the two of them to go to work, they were both still hallucinating. They went to work anyway. In their defense, one of them told their boss they were hallucinating and asked to go home. Their boss refused, stating that one of the other employees was high on methamphetamine. The friend who did not say anything accidentally spilled about 400 gallons of jet fuel under the wing of a commercial jet that day. He did not secure the fuel hose to the wing properly. Story 41. How completely intoxicated on Portuguese moonshine with my roommate. We entered a state of drunken curiosity when we could not figure out how a whiteboard was attached to the wall. I decided to pull it off the wall and, with the strength of someone truly inebriated, pulled off half the wall with it. Story 42. Dove in the mud and covered myself predator style, then stayed that way for the rest of the night. Story 43. We flipped an upright piano we found in an alley sitting in the rain. Not sure what exactly our plan was, but the piano fell onto its back with a loud, discordant tone and was still echoing off the walls as we sprinted around the corner, out of the alley. Story 44. Human dartboard. It requires metal-tipped darts and a target drawn on a bulletproof vest. A close second would be getting waterboard as a challenge between roommates to see who could last the longest. Driving is probably fourth on the list. Something tells me there is a third place in there I cannot remember. Story 45. I was taken to the hospital due to what was initially believed to be carbon monoxide poisoning, though it was later determined that I was intoxicated. While there, I was administered benzodiazepines, which significantly affected my behavior. I became verbally aggressive toward hospital staff and was asked to leave. When I refused, hospital security attempted to escort me out, leading to a physical altercation. Law enforcement officers were called, and during their attempt to detain me, I resisted, resulting in a confrontation involving multiple officers. I was ultimately taken into custody and spent the night in jail before being released on bail. I am currently facing charges that include 3 counts of resisting arrest, 1 count of trespassing, and at least 1 count of assault on an officer. Story 46. I drove 150 miles per hour on the freeway at 2 a.m. to see how fast I could go until I got scared and stopped. I was a fool. I have not gone that fast since. The fastest I have driven since then was 130 miles per hour while sober. Story 47. Held on to a moving Uber that rejected me because I was too intoxicated. It then threw me to the ground and I split my chin. I had to get stitches, so I went to the emergency room. There, I behaved poorly toward the staff and doctor. Because I was erratic, the doctor said he was going to restrain and sedate me. I screamed, "What are you going to do? Kill me, you little girl." He had security strap me down and administered Ativan. I woke up the next morning wondering what had happened. Fortunately, I had good insurance. The bill was $30,000 for monitoring me overnight as I was unconscious. 3.5 years sober. Story 48. I am 67 years old, and in the 1970s, drunk driving was common. I was once pulled over while intoxicated, and the police officer made me pour out the beer I was drinking. Another time, an officer followed me home after I admitted to being drunk. It was late, and he simply escorted me home. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.